Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to the Stoner Report. I'm Marius Stoner, Associate Editor of Cannabis Culture magazine, here at the British Columbia Marijuana Party Vapor Lounge at 307 West Hastings. Come on down and pay Jody or Jeremiah or Marijuana Man or me a visit, or come down to our store and buy some stuff. We still have stuff on sale, 50% off head hoodlum jackets and free Mark hoodies and all sorts of cool stuff down there. So come and take a look. So it's kind of a cloudy, kind of sunny day, kind of back and forth today in Vancouver. Kind of a cool breeze, so it's kind of nice today. So yeah, we're pretty happy. We're in between the Global Marijuana March, which turned out really well, and Cannabis Day, which is coming July 1st, for those of you who don't know. In a couple of weeks or so, there's the Champs Expo in Toronto. I believe Jeremiah and Jody are going to go over there and cover that. So yeah, that's basically what's happening around here these days. I think we have slightly over 50 days until Mark Emery gets back from prison, or at least that's when his sentence ends. As you know, we don't know exactly when he's going to come back after that. We just know that sentence is over. He's probably going to be held in U.S. custody in a private prison for a couple of weeks, and then perhaps even a couple of months in Canada, but we're going to try to pressure the government to not hold him very much longer after his release date. After all, he wasn't actually ever charged for a crime in Canada. So I guess then I'll get on with the news. All right. In Canada, Peace Naturals medical marijuana recall is Health Canada's second in a month. Health Canada has issued a recall of medical marijuana for the second time in just over a month. This time because it contained an unacceptable level of bacteria. The government agency that oversees the distribution of pot to medical patients issued a recall of product from Peace Naturals Project Incorporated, a marijuana grow operation in Clearview Township, Ontario, north of Toronto. Health Canada said the company voluntarily recalled the product due to positive bacterial testing outside of acceptable limits. The company has contacted 55 customers who have product from the batch and is advising them to stop using the product immediately. Customers can either return it to the company or destroy it by adding water to it and mixing it with cat litter, Health Canada's recommended way to get rid of pot. However, neither the company nor Health Canada have received reports of adverse events or effects associated with use of the product. Scale cannabis at the commercial level is way more difficult to produce than most people think, said Peace Naturals CEO Mark Gabuti. It is the latest sign of growing pains in the budding commercial medical marijuana industry, which Health Canada began regulating on April 1st, despite the fact that the agency does not officially approve the use of medical marijuana. The business has also been plagued with drug seizures by the Mounties and uncertainty over its future due to a court injunction that allows certain patients to keep growing their own product, rather than having to buy from commercial producers like Peace Naturals. A British Columbia judge sided with a patient group who argued the new Health Canada regulations are unconstitutional because forcing patients to buy from licensed producers is unaffordable for some. They will be able to continue to grow their own until a trial can be held and a final verdict is reached. Canadian medical marijuana growers challenge federal laws with an online legal kit. More than 200 people, many armed with a legal kit downloaded from the internet, have flooded the federal court with lawsuits demanding the right to possess and grow their own medical marijuana. A judge has put most of the cases on hold until a decision next year in a case examining Ottawa's recent changes to pot production. New regulations were to take effect April 1st, restricting medical marijuana production to licensed commercial growers, but an injunction was issued in March that temporarily allowed patients who were previously authorized to grow medical marijuana to continue doing so while some patients challenge the new rules. A federal court decision released this week notes 222 people, each representing themselves, have filed their own lawsuits alleging federal marijuana laws are unconstitutional. They want, among other things, personal exemptions to possess or grow their own pot. Some of the plaintiffs will still be permitted to grow under the terms of the injunction, Justice Michael Phelan wrote. Other plaintiffs include previously authorized patients whose licenses expired too early to be covered by the injunction, patients who believe possession limits imposed by the injunctions are too strict, and some who want to use marijuana for other reasons, including preventative medicine or self-actualization. These groups will see their cases put on hold until next year's federal court case is decided, Justice Phelan ruled. More pot lawsuits sprout up over Ottawa's medical marijuana rules. And these are even more than the last story. The lawsuits challenging Ottawa's attempted overhaul of the medical marijuana system continue to pile up, meaning the government will be forced to defend the new regulations in multiple courts as patients across the country claim they have a charter right to grow their own pot. Hundreds of people have filed lawsuits in recent months in various courts, arguing new regulations that took effect in April restricting marijuana production to licensed commercial growers are unconstitutional. Most of those cases have been delayed until the results of an ongoing federal court case is expected to be heard in February of next year, challenging the new regime. The judge in that case issued an injunction allowing many patients to continue growing at home in the meantime. But 3 patients in BC say their circumstances are too different to simply wait for the existing federal court case to play out. Even the injunction in the earlier case, they say, doesn't go far enough to meet their medical marijuana needs. A BC Supreme Court judge has ruled the men's legal action can continue even as the federal court hears similar arguments. The federal government has asked for the cases to be delayed. The plaintiffs are alleging that the medical marijuana laws interfere with their charter rights in a way that is deeply personal and which has grave impacts on their health, Judge Susan Griffin wrote in a decision posted to the court's website Tuesday. Canadian medical marijuana faces resistance from the medical community. The head of the Canadian Medical Association has a few choice words for the medical marijuana industry: quackery, snake oil salesman, bad medicine. Dr. Luis Hugo Francescuti is blatant in his disdain for medical marijuana industry, which he compares to big tobacco. It makes absolutely no sense to use the word medical in front of marijuana, he said. I think it makes no sense to put the word doctor in front of his name, I said. The head of the advocacy organization has one message for Canadian doctors when it comes to prescribing marijuana: don't do it. Maybe the broader debate should be to legalize it and let society regulate it like alcohol is regulated, Francescuti told HuffPost Canada interview. But without going there, please don't expect the medical community to prescribe something that we have absolutely no clue what it does. Well, doctor, if you have absolutely no clue what it does, why don't you read something? One of the country's most influential doctors, Francescuti, blatantly says he does not want Canada's budding commercial cannabis industry to succeed. But a recent overhaul of the medical marijuana system by Health Canada puts physicians in the driver's seat when it comes to determining whether the industry will grow or stagnate. Previously, Health Canada officials were ultimately responsible for deciding who had legal access to medical marijuana. But the federal agency changed its system on April 1st, and now a medical document, doctors shy from the word prescription, from a doctor is needed to get medical pot. A Virginia family moves to Colorado to treat epileptic child with cannabis oil. Another story like this. Last year, Dara Lytle and her 9-year-old daughter, Madeline, became marijuana refugees when they moved from Virginia to Colorado. At the time, Madeline was suffering from hundreds of seizures a day. Her doctor in Virginia recommended brain surgery. Then Dara heard how cannabis oil had treated children suffering from similar conditions. The oil worked. But since the oil was considered an illegal drug in much of the country, they had to move to Colorado, where it is legal, to continue treatment. According to the Colorado Springs Gazette, at least 150 marijuana refugee families from 43 states have left jobs, homes, and family so they could obtain the cannabis oil to treat a variety of ailments. Juan Gonzalez, this is an interview from Democracy Now! Juan Gonzalez says, "Today we look at marijuana refugees, people and families who have uprooted their lives and moved to Colorado with the hope of obtaining medical marijuana to treat various illnesses. Many are families with young children who suffer from epilepsy and relentless seizures. According to the Colorado Springs Gazette, at least 115 marijuana refugee families from 43 states have left jobs, homes, and the rest of their family so they could obtain oil made from a special strain of cannabis they have repeatedly quelled at the seizures in a handful of kids in Colorado Springs." Amy Goodman. The Colorado Springs Gazette recently published a piece about 9-year-old Madeline Lytle and her mother Dara, who moved from Virginia to Colorado. In a moment, Madeline and her mother will join us, but first let's turn to this video about their story produced by Colorado Springs Gazette. And you can go to Democracy Now! To view that video. And hi, my name is Madeline. And Dara says, "When I think of a child who has seizures, I think of a very low-functioning child. So to see my high-functioning child and imagine her losing function was very scary. There was hope that she wouldn't have any more, that it would be like that would be it, and she would just have one seizure. Then she had another one about a month later, and then it's like you go through all these emotions again. You don't know what's going to happen. And then earlier that year, I've been wondering, why can't she do math anymore? I'm trying to teach her the same grade over and over again, and nothing is sticking." So I love Democracy Now! It's one of the best newscasts there is. They often talk about things that the regular press don't talk about. So if you have a chance and you like news, go to democracynow.org and check out their daily newscast. It's just awesome. Oh. There we go. Minnesota medical marijuana legalization deal to allow 8 distribution sites. Minnesota lawmakers struck a deal Thursday to legalize medical marijuana that would set up 8 distribution sites and allow qualified patients to use the drug in oil, pill, and vapor form. The agreement was crafted to suit the concerns of Governor Mark Dayton, who supports it. "I look forward to signing this bill into law," Dayton said in a news release. Final votes are scheduled Friday in both Minnesota House and Senate. The compromise bridges differences between a restrictive House bill and a relatively expansive Senate bill. Under the agreement, 2 manufacturers would be able to grow the drugs and run a total of 8 distribution centers. Marijuana in leaf or plant form would not be allowed, and smoking the drug would be banned. Medical conditions for which marijuana would be permitted to treat symptoms include cancer, glaucoma, AIDS, Tourette's syndrome, seizures, and Crohn's disease, among others. And while Minnesota allows for glaucoma, New York doesn't. New York's medical marijuana bill, glaucoma out, rheumatoid arthritis in. Recent amendments to New York medical marijuana legislation could include not allowing it to be used for glaucoma, but for rheumatoid arthritis, the bill's Senate sponsors said. "We don't want it to be like California. California was like the Wild West," Savino said of the proliferation of medical marijuana dispensers there. She said ophthalmologists told her that better drugs are available to treat that illness, but rheumatoid arthritis would be included. "They now have better drugs that can treat glaucoma," Savino said on the Capitol Press Room, a public radio show. "In order to get a benefit from medical marijuana, if you're a glaucoma patient, you have to smoke a lot of it. There are now better drugs, so at their request they said this tool is out of the toolbox." The Assembly and Senate have legislation that would legalize medical marijuana on a limited basis for specific illnesses, which Savino describes as a serious, debilitating, life-threatening condition that's going to continue for a very long time. You mean like her own ignorance and stupidity? Okay, there's a video attached to this, or at least linked to the story. It's about Well, I'll read the story and I'll tell you what I think about it. Website launches to fight medical marijuana in Florida. The campaign is on to defeat the medical marijuana initiative that will be on the November ballot as Amendment 2. The Drug-Free Florida Committee, a group organized by the Florida Sheriff's Association and Save Our Society from Drugs, has launched its website with a 9-minute video opposing Amendment 2, the medical marijuana initiative. Amendment 2 proponents attack its credibility. Drug-Free Florida is chaired by Carlton Turner, a former drug czar under Ronald Reagan who has long been a controversial figure, and so far it has been entirely funded by Republican rainmaker and SOS founder Mel Sembler of St. Petersburg, who put in $100,000 in March. The primary proponents of Amendment 2, United for Care, founded and funded by Democratic rainmaker John Morgan of Orlando, already have released a rebuttal calling the video and web page's claims half-truths, distortions, and outright lies, and disputing many of the individual claims point by point. Here's the web page, voteno2.org, and you can also see the video there. The video borrows heavily from WFTV TV Channel 9 report on medical marijuana in California, as well as reports from other media including Orlando Sentinel, and mixes in interviews with Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, the FSU president, and others. They compare Florida's proposal with what is happening in California, reaching the conclusions that Amendment 2 could make marijuana abuse even more out of control than what is seen in California. Now, I've watched the first little bit of their 8-minute video, and I found the images so extremely racist. You can see the picture on the screen. That was a terrifying marijuana user there to scare you from voting for medical marijuana, and it just disgusts me, the content of the video. And looking at the site, it's completely accurate that it's all half-truths and lies. So I just thought I'd let you know. If you want to send them your thoughts, please do. Guess who profits when you can throw pregnant women in jail for using drugs? A new law allows a pregnant woman to be charged with assault for harm to her fetus. Pregnancy holds a special space in most societies. It is biological necessity for species preservation and represents the promise of future generations. Pregnancy is thought by many to bestow upon women an extra layer of societal protection and care. Social conventions dictate that pregnant women be given priority seating on buses, trains, and other forms of transport, and in lines for restrooms and priority rescue during natural disasters. We believe ourselves to be solicitous and helpful to pregnant women and accord them with extra means of respect. This month saw an escalation in the preservation of protection when Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam signed legislation that would allow women in the state to be charged with assault for harm to their fetus or newborn that can be attributed to the mother's use of illegal drugs beginning July 1st. Haslam signed the legislation after extensive conversations with experts including substance abuse, mental health, and law enforcement officials, he wrote in a statement. The intent of this bill is to give law enforcement and district attorneys a tool to address illicit drug use among pregnant women through treatment programs. Proponents of the measure point to mandate review of its efficacy and impact after 2 years, and that it classifies the new crime of fetal assault as a misdemeanor instead of a felony as ameliorating factors. However, I think that's a distinction without a difference for women who would forego prenatal care and not risk arrest for any reason, not to mention the notorious tendency of prosecutors to overcharge in order to facilitate plea bargains. And happy 220 to everybody in the West Coast. Happy 420 to everybody in the Central Mountain Time Zone, 2 zones over. I've got a joint here of some stuff. I don't know what it is. It's quite tasty though. So I think it's some kind of kush. So yes, this is the time where I briefly take a pause. Hey, old man, nice to see you. Ah, yes, I needed that. Yeah, this is the time I take to smoke dope. So how's everybody in the chat? What are you guys smoking? All 20 of you chatting out there. It's good to see you. Yeah, we're looking forward to having a nice summer here. We're looking forward to Cannabis Day. Mark's going to be out in about 50 days, so still want to go to freemark.ca and send him a letter. The last few weeks are going to be the hardest, I'm sure. And that was a 2:20 smoke break. I'll go back to the story. Once the door is open to criminalizing women's behavior during pregnancy, it's hard to limit the impact. One can't help but wonder whether there is any connection between Tennessee becoming the first state to enact legislation that would make women subject to criminal punishment because they became pregnant and failed to meet societal expectations, and its distinction as the corporate headquarters of the nation's largest private prison company, Correctional Corporation of America, which already operates 3 of the state's 14 prisons. Since its founding in 1983, CCA has profited from federal and state policies that have led to a dramatic rise in incarceration in the United States, a rise of 500% over the past 30 years. The U.S. population has only increased by 40%, although it claims that it has not lobbied for bills that extend or increase sentences for prisoners. For nearly 2 decades, CCA participated in and even led the task force of the American Legislative Exchange Council that pushed bills like so-called Truth in Sentencing and 3 Strikes legislation as models for states to adopt across the nation. CCA said its hired lobbying firms have spent about 30.9 million lobbying Congress and federal agencies from 1998 to August 2013 on bills relating to immigration, detention, and private prisons. So that's justice for you. Put people in jail for profit. Why the DEA chief should resign. Activists are using the Twitter hashtag #FireLeonhardt to call for Michelle Leonhardt's resignation. For months, Drug Enforcement Administration Administrator Michelle Leonhardt has openly rebuked the drug policy reform policies of Attorney General Eric Holder and President Obama with one embarrassing statement after another. She is now picking a fight with Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and other members of Congress over hemp. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice's office in the Inspector General has launched an investigation into multiple scandals plaguing the agency. It is clear that Leonhardt lacks the ability to lead and should resign. Activists are using the Twitter hashtag #FireLeonhardt. The DEA created a political firestorm this week when it seized seeds bound for a Kentucky hemp research program that was approved by Congress. Even Minority Leader Mitch McConnell weighed in, telling Politico last night, "It is an outrage that DEA is using finite taxpayer dollars to impound legal industrial hemp seeds. The Kentucky Agriculture Department is suing the agency." The seizure is the latest misstep of the agency, which is being investigated by the Department of Justice for numerous scandals. Earlier this month, the Department of Justice's offices of the Inspector General launched investigations into numerous DEA scandals, including the massacre of civilians in Honduras, the use of NSA data to both spy on virtually all Americans and to systematically fabricate evidence, controversial uses of confidential informants, airline passenger searches, and sexual misconduct. DEA Administrator Michelle Leonhardt herself has been at the center of several scandals, including the House of Death scandal, in which the DEA may have turned a blind eye to torture and murder, and the Andrew Chambers scandal, in which the DEA rehired a confidential informant with a history of lying. As drug cartels threaten her life, Mexico's most dangerous journalist uncovers more dark truths. Anabel Hernandez's reporting on the ties between the cartels and the nation's leadership has earned her enemies in high places. Despite recent attacks on her by unidentified gunmen, the government now says it will remove her bodyguards. In an exclusive interview, Hernandez explains why she refuses to surrender her pen. The Mexican investigative journalist Anabel Hernandez is recognized worldwide as one of the most important reporters on the war on drugs. Over 2 decades, she has received numerous awards for her work, including the 2012 Golden Pen of Freedom Award and the World Association of Newspapers and News Publishers. And just over a week ago, Reporters Without Borders placed Hernandez on its list of 100 information heroes, created to pay tribute to the courage of journalists and bloggers who constantly sacrifice their safety and sometimes their lives for their vocation. Hernandez's life has been at risk since she published Los Cerneros del Narco in 2010. The book, released in English last fall as Narcoland, breaks with conventional narratives of the drug war, which pit the Mexican government against drug traffickers. With unprecedented access to sources and tireless study of documents, Hernandez instead makes the ironclad case that the war is a sham. It aims limited to protecting the Sinaloa cartel. The book exposes the intricate ties between Mexico's leading drug traffickers and the leadership of the Mexican state. Published in 2010 to explosive effect, Narcoland remains one of the most widely read books in Mexico. Since 2011, Hernandez and her family have been the target of an escalated series of violent assaults. She has found decapitated animals in her doorstep. Gunmen attacked a family gathering. Last December, about a dozen unidentified men armed with AK-47s invaded her house in Mexico City, terrorizing neighbors and injuring one of her bodyguards. She was lucky not to be at home then, but the threats against Mexican journalists are deadly serious. Scores have been killed with impunity since 2000. Hernandez's courage, with her deep understanding, the product of years of relentless reporting of the drug war, makes her an essential voice. One we ignore at our peril. Nick Alexandrov. How did you begin covering the drug cartels? Annabelle Hernandez. I've been a journalist since 1993, when the newspaper Reforma was founded in Mexico. Back then, Reforma didn't hire experienced journalists, but journalism students, who are trained to become the kind of reporters Reforma needed. In 2000, when my father was kidnapped and killed, and the police refused to investigate unless the family paid them, my views on everything changed, and I started to investigate corruption in Mexico. The first case I discovered is known as Towelgate, involving illegal use of funds for redecorating Fox's houses, which occurred in when Vicente Fox was president. Investigating that kind of common corruption eventually led me to the drug cartels. Yeah, so that's a very interesting story. I'd read the rest, go and read the rest of it, and I think I'll try to pick up her book, Narcoland, in the States. And finally, a hemp story. We've alluded to it earlier. Kentucky sues to get hemp seeds release. Kentucky's Agriculture Department has filed a lawsuit seeking release of imported hemp seeds being held up by federal officials. Plaintiffs in the suit filed Wednesday in Louisville include the U.S. Justice Department, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The Justice Department did not immediately comment when contacted. The state Agriculture Department wants to distribute the seeds for use in pilot projects that would be Kentucky's first hemp crop in decades. Kentucky Agriculture Commissioner James Comer said that Kentucky officials thought they had an agreement with the DEA at 4 p.m. on Tuesday to apply for a permit for all the universities conducting pilot hemp projects, which are allowed under the Farm Bill that became law earlier this year. Then at 9 p.m., Kentucky officials got another letter from a different official suggesting a more elaborate process with different terms and conditions. That was never the congressional intent, Comer said, saying that the Farm Bill that allowed the pilot projects clearly states that it trumps any other regulations that would limit hemp growth. We're doing exactly what the federal law says when they continue to hold our seed, Comer said, adding that the window to plant for this year's growing season closes June 1st. So that's another week in the back and forth struggle for cannabis and hemp legalization. Thank you again for joining me. Don't forget to write Mark Emery. Visit freemark.ca to find out how. Also, don't forget, cannabis is the most advanced plant on the planet, and we're going to use it to save ourselves and the world. So tune in at 4 for Jeremiah's show and other shows at other times during the week. So until then, I'm going to say goodbye. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.